The right manager can be just the thing that takes a wrestler to the next level and turns them into a fully fledged WWE superstar. Often the missing piece of the puzzle, managers have greatly added to the presentation of some of the biggest names in the industry. Though they're all incredible in their own rights, it's hard to imagine the careers of the likes of Brock Lesnar, The Undertaker and Randy Savage taking off in quite the same way if they weren't guided by Paul Heyman, Paul Bearer and Miss Elizabeth. Putting a wrestler with a top manager should be a way of facilitating success, but for a number of reasons, it doesn't always happen, sometimes leading to seriously forgettable associations. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 forgotten WWE Manager Wrestler combinations. Join us! Number 10, Teddy Long and Mark JINDRAK. Now hold on a minute, player, I hear you say. I know you remember WWE Hall of Famer Teddy Long taking charge of Doom. You remember him leading Mark Henry into battle too, most likely. Hell, you probably even recall him as the mouthpiece for Chris Nowinski, Rodney Mack and Jazz around the same time. But Mark JINDRAK, what was that all about? Well, after JINDRAK got split from Garrison Cade and sent to SmackDown in the 2004 draft, he found himself repackaged as the reflection of perfection, a ruthless aggression spin on Lex Luger's old narcissist persona. Since JINDRAK was tall, chiseled and handsome in the face, WWE obviously had an idea to make him a single star, so they paired him with Long in a bid to get him over. They even gave Mark an undefeated streak as he beat the likes of Orlando Jordan, Hardcore Holly, Scotty 2 Hotty and Billy Kidman. And that's all well and good, but those matches all took place on house shows or Velocity, a weekend show that hardly anyone watched. The JINDRAK Long alliance lasted a couple of months until Teddy became general manager and JINDRAK was put in a stable with Kurt Angle and Luther Reigns. Number 9, Stevie Richards and KRONIK. There weren't too many things to cheer in the dying days of WCW, but KRONIK were one of them. Big Brian Adams and equally as big Brian Clark, remembered by WWE fans as Crush and Adam Bomb, took the WCW Tag Team division by storm, winning the WCW Tag Team titles twice and wrecking everyone with their impressive high-impact offense. They didn't immediately get signed by WWE for the invasion, but found themselves in the mix a few months later, being recruited in the storyline by, of all people, Steven Richards. Richards enlisted their help to take out The Undertaker after the American Badass had put an end to his Right to Censor group earlier in the year. KRONIK's debut was strong and they looked the business when dismantling Kaientai in their first match, but it all fell apart once they got in the ring with Taker and Kane at Unforgiven 2001. With Richards stationed at ringside, the two teams had one of the worst matches of the year, full of awkward and mistimed moves and moments that made the locker room leader noticeably upset. And that was it for KRONIK in WWE, as Clark was canned and Adams was sent to developmental, while Stevie spun his wheels before eventually finding success managing Victoria. Number 8, Trish Stratus and Val Venis. Though in time she developed into one of the best female wrestlers and all-around performers in the history of the company, when Trish Stratus was first signed and introduced on television in the year 2000, she was there primarily as eye candy. And that she did very well indeed. I mean, just look at her. A pretty, pretty lady. Stratus first caught the attention as the manager of TNA, but a few months into her tenure, partnered up for a short while with Val Venis. This was during the period that the big Val Boski had turned heel and dropped the whole adult star gimmick, looking to be taken seriously as a top single star in the Intercontinental Championship scene. Under Stratus, Val feuded with Rikishi before the pair of them got into it with Chyna and Eddie Guerrero. They broke up after Stratus lost the IC title for Venus, whoops, so she went back to focusing on Test and Albert. All told, their union only lasted a couple of months. Towards the end of the year, Trish found herself in another short-term manager-client relationship, this time with WWE champion Kurt Angle, as he feuded with Triple H. While a spot opposite the WWE champion and a major rivalry should have been memorable, this was during the same time she was gratuitously making out with Vince McMahon every week, so, you know. Number 7, the JACKYL and the ACOLYTES. Don Callis is riding high these days, being an integral part of AEW World Champion Kenny Omega's act. However, he didn't have such a good run of it in WWE in the late 90s, where he, as the JACKYL, was first a member and then the leader of the Truth Commission. The Oddities were an upgrade, and Jesus Christ, how many times can you say that? But they weren't around for too long. The JACKYL, drifting aimlessly, was then put in charge of two other talents who had been floundering without direction and found themselves teaming up in a sink or swim situation. Farouk and Bradshaw, originally dubbed Hell's Henchmen, soon became the Acolytes under the management of the JACKYL. It was an act with potential, and the Acolytes looked like two performers reinvigorated by the renewed push, but it was over before it really began. Much of that probably has to do with the fact that the Texan wasn't fond of Don, who he labelled Monkey Boy backstage and would rib mercilessly. After just a few televised appearances together, JACKYL left WWE and wound up in ECW, while the Acolytes joined the Undertaker's Ministry of Darkness. Number 6, Amy Zidian and Jimmy Wang Yang. Like many before and after her, Amy Zidian's elimination from the WWE Diva Search didn't mean the end of the road for her in the world's largest sports entertainment enterprise. Though she was the first hopeful eliminated in the 2006 version of the contest, WWE signed her up anyway because they liked her look. After a very brief spell in developmental, she was called up to the main roster after pitching herself as the girlfriend/valet of Jimmy Wang Yang. Ah yes, Jimmy Wang Yang, one of the great wrestling repackages of the time, from heelish martial arts practitioner to chaps-wearing, yee-hawing redneck. Zidian was kitted out to match her client, adopting the Daisy Dukes and cowboy boots you would expect, managing him for a month on SmackDown as he became the top contender to Gregory Helms' Cruiserweight title. And then she was released just days before the championship showdown, which is a story in and of itself. See, after receiving her promotion, Amy began to immediately self-destruct backstage, insulting Diva Search winner Layla, Crystal Marshall, Vicky Guerrero, and now this is the kicker, Stephanie McMahon. Knowing what a heat magnet she was, Yang supposedly stayed well away from her outside of their matches and segments. WWE rejigged the formula later on, utilising another blonde, Tori Wilson, in the role. Number 5, Slick and Rick Martel. When you hear the words Slick and Rick together, you most likely immediately picture a buck-naked Ric Flair patrolling the aisle of an airplane and wooing anyone unfortunate enough to catch a glimpse of Space Mountain. Or at least I do. Maybe I'm not well. Anyway, Slick and Rick also applies to when the Jive Soul Bro joined forces with Rick Martel after he turned heel on Strikeforce partner Tito Santana. An odd pairing in many ways, they just never seemed to fit one another the way that Slick did with Butch Reed, the Twin Towers, or Kamala. It was never actually properly explained why Martel and Slick became involved with one another, though a prevailing notion amongst fans is that WWE perhaps didn't have the confidence in Martel to speak for himself due to his strong French-Canadian accent. And Slick was a good manager with a proven track record, but it just didn't work on this occasion. In recent years, Slick has said that while the two got along personally, professionally Rick didn't want to be associated with him as he felt it was holding him down and that the act was going nowhere. Their partnership didn't last long, Martel soon after becoming the model and proving that he could, in fact, speak for himself. Number 4, Daivari and Kurt Angle. After Muhammad Hassan was almost literally killed off by WWE following the regrettable terrorist-like angle that coincided with the July 7th, 2005 London bombings, Hassan's manager Daivari disappeared for a while. After spending a few months in developmental, he was brought back to the Raw brand as the hand-picked shady referee of Kurt Angle. The Olympic hero was in a feud with WWE champion John Cena at the time and sought to utilise every underhanded method imaginable in his bid to win the gold. Vince McMahon put an end to the whole referee deal and Daivari simply became Kurt's manager instead. They failed to dethrone Cena, but managed to jump ship to the blue brand and win the World Heavyweight title in a battle royal after it had been vacated by an injured Batista. Angle's triumph did not lead to an extended run with Daivari as his manager, however, as they broke up on the next episode of Raw after Daivari cost Angle his match with Shawn Michaels and then slapped the WWE Hall of Famer in the face. Might have been a mistake that, Daivari mate. After their union was over, Daivari began managing Mark Henry against Angle before unleashing the Great Khali on the world. Number 3, The Coach and Mr. Perfect. Fear not, my friends, the late great Curt Hennig did not have an unmemorable association with Jonathan Coachman or anything mental like that. No, you see, before The Coach, there was The coach. Back when Mr. Perfect was managed expertly by Bobby the Brain Heenan and was reigning as the Intercontinental Champion, with many believing that, under Heenan's guidance, he would one day be WWE Champion. However, when the Brain decided to give up managing in order to focus solely on his broadcasting career, Perfect decided he needed another man in his corner, and on an episode of The Funeral Parlor, he and Heenan introduced the coach. Coach was, well, your classic high school football coach, shouting nonsense and maniacally blowing a whistle in a bid to motivate. The man behind the gimmick was former star John the Golden Greek Tolos, who had been a top performer from the 50s through the 70s. Coach and Perfect were only together for a couple of months, with their most high-profile appearance being at the 1991 SummerSlam for an Intercontinental title defense against Bret Hart. That was also, sadly, Hennig's last match for some time, as he took a lengthy sabbatical to rehab his knackered back. Coach also briefly managed the Beverly Brothers around this time, but that role was taken over by the Genius, and George was released. Number 2, Sunny and the Godwins. Redefining the female manager/valet role in the mid-90s, Sunny was on hand to lead the likes of the Body Donnas, the Legion of Doom, and others into battle. With her charisma and sex appeal, she was a great asset to any performer or act, equally adept at playing face or heel. She had a habit of discarding teams whenever they didn't do what she wanted or let her down though, which is what happened to Skip and Zip after they lost the tag team titles to the Godwins. Phineas Godwin, of course, had been smitten with Sunny for some time. During the free-for-all pre-show portion of the In Your House Beware of Dog pay-per-view, she came out with the Godwins and Hillbilly Jim. Phineas was distracted after Billy Gunn planted a kiss on the object of his affection, however, which led to the Smoking Guns beating the Hog Farmers for the straps. A day later on Raw, the blonde bombshell came to the ring with the new champ, signalling the end of her fling with the Godwins. So within the space of a couple of weeks, Sunny had jumped between 3 different teams, ending up with the titles in her possession, but eventually getting slopped for her transgressions. It was also around this period that Sunny managed grumpy gladiator Farouk in another of those short-lived did that really happen creative decisions. Number 1, TERRI Runnels and the Hardy Boys. When the Hardys first started to make waves in WWE in 1999, they caught the eye with their cutting-edge wrestling style and penchant for taking risks, but were perhaps lacking when it came to cutting convincing promos. Initially, they were paired up with backstage booster Michael P.S. Hayes, who looked like a walking midlife crisis in those baggy pants and skin-tight t-shirts. I mean, it was positively conservative next to his usual attire, but still, you know. Matt and Jeff dropped him to join up with Gangrel and form the New Brood, but there was another suitor interested in the young Daredevils. TERRI Runnels fancied them both, as well as Edge and Christian, and devised the best of 5 matches TERRI Invitational Tournament between the two teams, culminating in the fantastic ladder match at No Mercy 99. The Hardys won and walked away with $100,000 and the managerial services of the former Marlena, giving the vampire the old garlic kiss goodbye. TERRI managed the Hardys for a couple of months before she was put through a table by Bubba Ray Dudley and then turned on Matt and Jeff for failing to prevent the attack. She then fleetingly started managing Edge and Christian, which was supposedly going to result in the premature breakup of E&C until cooler heads prevailed and TERRI was speared out of the picture.